Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling something really important today, and that's Alzheimer's diagnosis.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is, and whether this is something you're dealing with personally, supporting a loved one through, or even, maybe you're a healthcare professional looking to brush up on things,
Right?
understanding this process, like how it all works, it's absolutely crucial. And luckily, we've got some really insightful material for this deep dive. It's like a detailed expert breakdown of the entire diagnostic process.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff, actually.
It is. So let's jump right in. One of the things that struck me going through this material was just how, it's not as straightforward as I think a lot of people assume.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just like, oh, someone's having memory problems, must be Alzheimer's. It's way more involved than that, right?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, memory issues, those are often
Yeah.
like the first domino to fall. But getting a diagnosis, it's really about putting together this complex puzzle. You got to look at the whole picture.
Okay, I like that, the puzzle analogy. So where do we even begin putting those pieces together? What's the first step in this whole process?
So it all starts with a really thorough history and physical exam.
Okay, so like basic doctor stuff, but
Well, yeah, but we're talking about really digging deep into things like family history of dementia, what medications they're on,
right.
and any changes in thinking or behavior, not just memory, but the whole shebang.
See, that's what I find so interesting. I think a lot of people, myself included, we tend to, zero in on the memory aspect.
Yeah, it's a common
But
misconception.
you're saying it's way broader than that. So what kind of changes are we talking about? Can you give me some examples?
Sure, so let's say someone's having a hard time finding the right words, or maybe their personality's doing a 180. Those are big red flags, just as important as, say, forgetting where they put their keys.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. So it's all connected.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
all part of that bigger picture of cognitive function.
Which I'm guessing leads us to those cognitive assessments I've heard about, right?
We got it.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are we talking about here?
All right, so you've got your classic cognitive tests like the MMSE, which stands for Mini Mental State Examination. It's kind of a quick check-in on things like orientation, recall,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the SLUMS and the MoCA, which are also cognitive evaluations.
Right. And these are all pretty standard, right?
Yeah, those are pretty common. But here's where it gets really cool. We also use tools like the 88 and the MiniCog, which give us a much more nuanced perspective.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So imagine trying to understand someone's ability to drive. Like a standard test might just be, can they drive, yes or no?
Right.
But the 88 is like saying, okay, can they drive short distances during the day? What about at night? Do they get lost on routes they've driven a million times?
Wow. It's like getting the full story.
Exactly. We get a much clearer picture of the challenges they're facing in their day-to-day lives.
And that's crucial, right? Because it's one thing to have a diagnosis on paper, but another to understand how it's actually impacting someone's life.
100%. And speaking of getting the full picture, we can't just focus on the brain itself. We also do blood tests.
Blood tests. See, now that's not something I would have expected. How do those fit into the Alzheimer's puzzle?
Well, it's all about ruling out other suspects, so to speak. Because there are other treatable conditions that can actually mimic dementia symptoms.
Oh, wow. So it's like eliminating other possibilities before landing on Alzheimer's.
Precisely. Things like thyroid issues or vitamin deficiencies, they can throw you for a loop because they can cause very similar symptoms.
That's incredible. So it's like making sure you're not barking up the wrong tree, so to speak.
Exactly. And now for the part everyone's been waiting for, the brain imaging.
All right, let's talk brain scans. This is where it feels like we're stepping into a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It's pretty wild. So we use things like CT scans and MRI scans, and those help us rule out things like tumors or strokes. But then we have these amazing tools like functional imaging. FDG-PE scans, those are super cool. They show us how the brain is using glucose, which is its main energy source.
Okay, so how does that relate to Alzheimer's?
Well, in Alzheimer's, certain areas of the brain, they just aren't as active. And these scans, they can actually show us that.
Wow, so it's like a heat map of brain activity.
Exactly. It's like seeing the brain in action and noticing where things are. Well, a little colder, so to speak.
That's incredible. Now, I've also read about amyloid PE scans. Where do those fit into all of this?
You're right on the money. Amyloid PUT scans, those are specifically designed to detect amyloid plaques, which are one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
And these scans, They're really changing the game. I mean, they're giving us this whole new level of understanding. But the thing is, they're not like widely available yet. It's still kind of new technology.
Still, it feels like we're like getting closer and closer to unraveling this whole disease with every new tool, which is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the history and physical, those cognitive evaluations, blood work, brain imaging. What else factors into an Alzheimer's diagnosis?
Ah, well, we also make sure to screen for depression.
Depression.
Yeah, because it's not just about the physical structure of the brain.
Yeah.
It's about the whole person. It's about their mood, their mental well-being, all of it.
That makes sense, but I'm curious, what's the connection there with Alzheimer's?
Well, for starters, depression can really mess with your cognitive function. It can actually mimic some dementia symptoms, which makes things even trickier.
Oh, wow. So it could be mistaken for Alzheimer's.
Exactly. And on top of that, even if someone is dealing with Alzheimer's, addressing their mental health, their emotional well-being, that's just as important as anything else.
Absolutely. So it all ties back to that whole person approach.
Exactly.
This has been so eye-opening. So we've talked about getting the diagnosis, but what happens after that? Like, what does that journey look like for someone who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
That's where functional assessments come
Yeah.
in. We use these tools, things like the FAQ or the CDR-SB,
Okay.
to really understand how the disease is affecting their daily life. Can they still dress themselves? Can they manage their finances? Can they cook a meal? These tools paint a real-life picture of how the disease is impacting the individual.
Wow. So it's really about, like, not just the disease itself, but the person living with it and how it's affecting their day-to-day life.
Exactly. And having that information, it helps families, caregivers, everyone involved to provide the right support.
That's so important. And I think this deep dive has really highlighted that, diagnosing Alzheimer's, it's not this quick, easy thing. It's incredibly complex.
It really is.
It's not just about memory tests. It's this whole journey of piecing together a puzzle.
You got it.
We've learned so much, and it really makes you think, given everything that goes into this diagnosis, how can we, as a society, as individuals, how can we improve early detection and support?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time.
See you next time.
Bye.